Well, hello everyone, brand new webcam. We'll see how well this works. I hope you had great holidays. So, we're here talking about post-quantum cryptography, and this is going to be very important because as we speak, the NSA is recording everything you do now. They can't read it. They can't break current encryption, but they are salivating over the day where quantum computers will come out and break standard encryption like elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman or elliptic curve 25519. All of these ones, they'll be able to go back and see everything we're doing now. Of course, we don't want that to happen, so as soon as we can, we need to get the post-quantum protocols going. Now, there's a problem. As we'll see, these post-quantum protocols, however good a job they might do against attacks from quantum computers, they tend not to be as good as the existing protocols at attacks from classical computers, and so we don't want to take a step back with that. So the solution is to do a hybrid approach. You use them both, and you require that you get through both. Like in a signature algorithm, you do one signature with a traditional algorithm, and then another signature with a post-quantum algorithm, and say, hey, both of these have to verify. Camera brightness is doing weird things. I don't know. New cam, I'll have to troubleshoot it. I don't know why it did that. But anyway, you got to get through both. That's called the hybrid approach, and guess what? The NSA doesn't like that. Oh, gee, imagine that. The NSA doesn't like us actually having effective ways of protecting ourselves against what they want to do to us in the future. So, this is from Dan Bernstein's blog. He's the cryptographer who was, he did the elliptic curve 25519, and he's also part of the team that did NTRU, which is one of the post-quantum protocols that they've been looking at. And I've referenced this blog before on the podcast when we've talked about, apparently the NSA has been doing some behind-the-scenes thing. For the last 10 years or so, NIST got pretty good about doing this all publicly and transparently and open source and everything else. And now in the Biden administration, they seem to have gone back, and now they're doing kind of everything in secret behind closed doors with the NSA. So that could be a problem because we've only got one shot to get this right. Because the longer we take to do this, the more of our stuff the NSA is just going to keep gobbling up and be able to do with later. We want to go ahead and do it so that by the time it does happen, any of the old conversations that they could go back and decrypt and look at and spy on without a warrant, well, hopefully it would take so long they would already be obsolete and they wouldn't get anything good. So we'll get into this, but I got to do a quick edit. I'll be right back. Okay, getting back into this. Dan Bernstein talks about how in 2019... Weird brightness things going on with the cam. I don't know why. Alright, in 2019, Google and Cloudflare ran an experiment where they upgraded HTTPS to post-quantum encryption. Google ran a similar experiment in 2016. Well, oops. The 2016 experiment ran into patent trouble. And that's what we don't want. We don't want to have these things protected by patents where we're beholden to whatever some corporation wants to do. As for the 2019 experiment, they used Psych, which in 2022 was shown by public attacks to be breakable. See, that's the problem. It takes a while. You can't just come right out of the bat and say, yeah, this is a great one. It can't be hacked. No, it takes a while for everyone to knock it around and figure that out. Upgrading connections to Psych wasn't just failing to protect those connections against future quantum computers, it was encrypting the connections using an algorithm broken by today's computers. Doesn't matter if it's quantum resistant or not, if the existing computers can break it. So the only reason it wasn't giving away user data is because it was a hybrid. They continued to use existing elliptic curve cryptography, which will be broken by future quantum computers, while adding the layer of protection with the new algorithm. And he mentions how OpenSSH, we talked about that in April 2022, they upgraded to a hybrid NTRU prime plus X25519. Google upgraded its internal communications to a hybrid and upgraded Chrome to a different hybrid, X25519 with Kyber 768. So the idea is we use a post-quantum layer to protect today's data against future quantum attacks, at the same time keep the pre-quantum layer so they don't lose any security. So this is kind of like putting two locks on your door of different types. We've got the key lock. That's good because you need a key, but keys can be stolen, or you could have like the little guy with the lock picks going in, messing with the tumblers, and I've got to figure out what setting is doing that. So maybe we want something better. Maybe we want a thumbprint reader. Oh, but maybe there's a way of breaking the thumbprint reader. Well, if the thumbprint reader and the key lock are broken by completely different methods, then just have both. You do the thumbprint, and then you do the key, and then you get in. That way, if someone gets a copy of the key, well, they can't get through the thumbprint. If they can manage to defeat the thumbprint, they still don't have a key. They'd have to defeat both. And that's the point. And Bernstein says this shouldn't be controversial. However, NSA stated in May 2022, it does not expect to approve hybrids. And after the psych break, NSA issued a fact that retreats from does not expect to approve to will not require. But they're continuing to discourage hybrids. Now, their public positions have a major influence on the cryptographic market. The military budget is approaching $1 trillion a year, and NSA controls the cryptographic part of that purchasing. But Bernstein says, as for hybrids, NIST and other standardization organizations can and should require upgrades to use hybrids. For example, with the following language for key encapsulation mechanisms, KEMs, any upgrade from pre-quantum encryption to this KEM shall retain the pre-quantum encryption and add this KEM as an extra layer of defense rather than removing the pre-quantum encryption. Okay, we're going to have to see if my voice holds. So he goes over the NSA's anti-hybrid arguments. They claim that hybrids add complexity, and as we've talked about before, complexity is the enemy of security. But in this case, Bernstein says that's not true. They don't add complexity. A protocol using a signature system doesn't care that the signature system is internally using a pre-quantum system and a post-quantum system, and two, internally requiring both of those to pass verification. And he says this doesn't require any additional negotiation, doesn't require additional error handling, and most importantly, isn't required by the protocol in the first place. So it's just like you're doing a signature, then you're doing another signature. That's all you're doing. The NSA says they introduce additional interoperability concerns now that all algorithms plus the method of hybridization must be features common to all parties. It's also not true. Yes, upgrades require interoperability, but that's true no matter what the upgrade is. Even upgrading to a non-hybrid KEM will work the same way as upgrading to a hybrid KEM. And the NSA also says implementers would need to anticipate an additional significant transition from hybrid to quantum resistance as classical algorithms use their utility. So Bernstein says, here's the scenario to think about. Imagine public demonstrations of low-cost quantum attacks showing that X25519 has negligible security value. Imagine then moving from a hybrid with X25519 to just the post-quantum version. So you've got the initial transition to the hybrid, followed by the transition to just the post-quantum protocol. But what makes this second transition significant? It isn't a security upgrade. You don't upgrade security by removing a step. So even if X25519 in this example is completely broken as to be totally useless, it might not add anything, but it's not removing anything either. It's an extra step, but that extra step doesn't decrease security, so. He says NSA's argument here is a puzzling combination of 1, arguing that it's important to minimize the number of transitions, and 2, arguing that if there's a transition to a hybrid, then it will be important to subsequently transition away from the hybrid. This doesn't make sense unless you assume that there's something wrong with hybrids in the first place. In other words, this two-transition argument isn't an independent argument against hybrids. Let me do another edit. Back to school time is fun time. All right, where was I? Okay, next NSA claim. They say hybrid solutions make implementations even more complex, so one must balance the risk of flaws in an increasingly complex implementation with the risk of a cryptanalytic breakthrough. And Bernstein says, let's say you've designed a cryptographic application using X25519. You decide to upgrade from pre-quantum to post-quantum. You sensibly use a hybrid. Along with the existing X25519 code, there's new code for the KEM, let's call it Ultra KEM. You then compute a hybrid hash. You hash the X25519 session key, the Ultra KEM session key, the X25519 public keys, and the Ultra KEM ciphertext, and you use the output as the new session key. Skipping the hybrid would certainly reduce code volume in the long run. Once all clients and servers support Ultra KEM, you can eliminate X25519 and the code for the hybrid hash. Could the X25519 code have bugs? Yes, it's easier to implement than the NSA's ECDH. And by the way, if you recall, the last time the NSA introduced a protocol into the standards, an elliptic curve protocol, turns out they shoved in a backdoor. Might want to keep that in mind when you're evaluating the NSA's claims about all this. But it is easier to implement, but that doesn't mean that the risk is zero. Someone might make a mistake. But why is NSA not mentioning the risk of bugs in the Ultra KEM software? Isn't that obviously a bigger risk? This Ultra KEM software would be newer and more complicated. So why wouldn't it be a greater chance of something going wrong with that? And if that happens, then yeah, the Ultra KEM would be flawed in its security, but at least you'd have elliptic curve 25519 still giving you protection against classical attacks. And Bernstein says, let's be clear about what NSA needs to happen to support its scenario of what I'll call a hybrid reversal, meaning the two keys together are somehow less secure than just the post-quantum algorithm. There needs to be a program partitioning disaster in the X25519 software, such as an exploitable buffer overflow. or there needs to be some similarly devastating bug in the lines of code for the hybrid hash, such as omitting the UltraKEM session key from the hash input. But, he says, we have tools automatically checking for that. So how exactly is a buffer overflow supposed to happen? As for a bug in the hybrid hash, how is this supposed to slip past interoperability testing? Because that would make it incompatible. Not saying a hybrid reversal is impossible to achieve, but NSA's wording, risk of flaws in an increasingly complex implementation, makes the reader think about the overall amount of code and suggests, incorrectly, that any flaws in this code are an argument against hybrids. And they're not. Okay, and the last one they say, more security products fail due to implementation or configuration errors than failures in their underlying algorithms. Therefore, spending limited resources to add complexity can weaken security. Bernstein says this needs clarification. What do you mean products? What's included in that? Is NSA claiming that vulnerabilities in non-cryptographic code somehow count as arguments against hybrids? Is NSA excluding, for example, the 1990s, when 95% of SSL connections used RSA 512, which was breakable no matter how competent the implementation was? Alright, and he mentions he has a new paper that takes their post-quantum competition, NIST, as a case study. Out of their 69 round 1 submissions in 2017, 48% of them are broken by now. And broken means they're less secure than AES 128, because that was the standard. Usually things are encrypted with AES 256, which is much stronger, and that will be quantum resistant, by the way. That's not the ones we're worried about. It's the signature algorithms like elliptic curve 25519 and elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. Those are the ones we're worried about. Of the 48 submissions that were unbroken during round 1, 25% are broken now. Out of the 28 selected by NIST in 2019 for round 2, 36% are broken now. These are shockingly high failure rates. No, Psych isn't an isolated example. Don't let yourself be fooled by confident-sounding salesmen. And he says, people aren't demonstrating any predictive power if they merely point to an unbroken system and claim reasons for its security. Keep in mind that a breakable system is always unbroken until it's broken, until someone actually attacks it. Incorrect claims of its security in the meantime can be generated by pure confirmation bias. Yeah, everything's going to be unbroken until it's broken. But if you wait until it's broken, then that's too late. You don't want to allow unbroken to mean unbreakable. Alright, going way down, we're going to get to the GCHQ arguments. And a lot of these just echo the NSA arguments, like the thing about being too complex. And they also claim there is not yet guidance or a consensus on how to do this in a secure way. And Bernstein says, what? Sign the message with both signature systems. How complicated is that? You sign it twice, both signatures have to match. On the verifier side, accept the message only if both signatures pass verification. If the words, "there is not yet guidance," are supposed to be a claim that this hasn't been written down, well, the reason there's no research activity here is that this is a trivially solved problem. Everyone already knows how to do this. what I've just explained. And GCHQ complains about additional complexity and the difficulty in migrating PKIs mean that a single migration to a fully post-quantum PKI is preferred to adopting an intermediate hybrid. And Bernstein says migrating from PKI from, say, ED 25519 to ED 25519 plus ultrasign works the same way as migrating it just to a non-hybrid ultrasign. It works the same way. So why would there be an additional migration problem just because you're migrating to a hybrid? And they claim traditional PKC algorithms will provide no additional protection against an attacker with a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. And Bernstein says, think about a demo showing that $1 billion spent on quantum computation can break 1,000 X25519 keys. And that would be terrible. That would be $1 million per key. We should be aiming for much higher security than that. We don't even want $1 billion attack to break one key. We want it to take like the age of the universe or something like that. We want it to take more money than exists to break one key. Users who care about the security of their data will be happy that we deployed post-quantum cryptography. But are the users going to say, oh, well, let's turn off X25519 and make each session $1 million cheaper to attack? Yeah, if it's $1 million to break a key, well, let's just remove that and make it $1 million cheaper. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And Bernstein says, I'm skeptical. I think users will need to see much cheaper attacks before agreeing that X25519 has negligible security value. And he closes off this section by saying, there are no new anti-hybrid arguments here. Alright, I've been talking enough. I've been trying to keep all the technical jargon to a minimum, so let's get down to where he closes off the blog post. He says, the most important message that readers pick up from NSA's text is that breaks of post-quantum systems are rare. I've given numbers to the contrary. No, they're not. Remember those percentages? NSA could respond that, well, each of those breaks was a breakthrough. And he says, well, because the word breakthrough isn't quantified, it's unfalsifiable. It's the dragon in Carl Sagan's garage. But that word plays a central role in NSA's FAQ. It influences perceptions of the risk of post-quantum systems being broken and influences in decision-making processes regarding hybrids. If NSA honestly believes that post-quantum systems are rarely broken, why isn't NSA quantifying it? If NSA honestly believes that they pose important complexity concerns, why aren't they quantifying the complexity? If GCHQ honestly believe they pose important cost concerns, why aren't they quantifying those costs? Sure, these are multi-billion-dollar spy agencies with an incentive to weaken cryptography, but that's not even the point here. It's useful to ask the same question if you saw it in an academic paper, claiming that post-quantum systems are rarely broken. Why is the claim not quantified? So even if we weren't suspicious AF about them, as we should be, even if it's just some, researcher publishing a paper, still the question you want to ask. And Bernstein says it's possible for skeptical readers to collect the numbers that NSA and GCHQ are omitting, but this takes work. That's why the burden of proof is on the claimant. They're claiming it's too complex. They're claiming it's too costly. They're claiming it's too difficult to implement. Okay, show us the numbers. Quantify it. You do it. Don't make us do it to try to verify your claim. Early in the NIST post-quantum competition, Tanya Lang and I, this is Bernstein talking, prepared an overview slide showing which submissions had been broken. We included updated versions in a series of talks. After new signature systems were submitted to NIST in 2023, Tom Wiggers assembled a signature zoo tracking which of those have been broken, and there are other examples of crypto system tracking. I like this to be more systematic so that readers can easily find the data. And he says, I have the luxury of being able to take time to investigate topics I think are important without worrying about whether this produces papers fitting the scope of existing conferences or journals. So I have the aforementioned papers with case studies of quantifying cryptographic risks and code complexity and dollar costs. But I'd like to see much more work done on these topics. I'd like to see the cryptographic community making clear to junior researchers that the cryptographic community cares about these topics and is providing venues for publishing papers on these topics. And he closes off saying, ultimately, what matters here is that, as illustrated by NSA GCHQ arguments about hybrids, the process of making cryptographic decisions raises quantitative questions. We owe it to the users to carefully investigate those questions. And like I've said before, we also need to ask NIST why they're going back to kowtowing to the NSA when we should have learned our lesson on that 10 years ago. Because like I said, we need to get it right as soon as we can. And hybrids are a good way of ensuring that. And they don't want us to do that. Gee, I wonder why. Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Comment God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and go to donate.pagosity.tv. All sorts of ways to give securely. Yeah, I guess maybe sometime in the future they'll be able to figure out you made these payments. But hey, if it's cryptocurrency, they won't even know, will they? Yeah, you can do cryptocurrency. You can also do PayPal and Venmo. And you can also go to Patreon or Subscribestar, become a regular supporter, get these videos early and ad-free. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, remember, protect all your transmissions and do what you can to protect them against future quantum attacks as well. Use those hybrid algorithms, make them as secure as you can, and above all, no matter what, stay strong and be free.